Welcome to the Daily Climate Show. Coming up, a warning of famine in the Horn of Africa as drought and food insecurity combine with deadly consequences. Dozens killed, millions stranded as the worst monsoon rains in years hit Bangladesh and northern India. And a new president for Colombia on a mission to address climate change. Hello and welcome to the Daily Climate Show, where we report on the impact of climate change, hear from those most affected and track the changes that are responsible for those impacts on the planet. And we start today with a warning of a humanitarian disaster in Eastern Africa due to both drought and the impact of the war in Ukraine. Now, the Horn of Africa is facing severe drought after the rainy season fouled for the fourth year in a row, with Somalia and the self-declared Republic of Somaliland facing the worst drought in 40 years. Almost 800,000 people have left their homes in the countryside to seek help in cities. Combined with international food shortages caused by the war in Ukraine, which is a huge food exporter, the fouled rainy season and a lack of aid funding have created the perfect storm that could quickly lead to famine, and more than 7 million people are facing high levels of food insecurity in the coming months. Plus, 1.5 million children under the age of 5 are facing acute malnutrition. Well, our international affairs editor, Dominic Waghorn, reports from Mandera in the self-declared Republic of Somaliland. And a warning, his report begins with images of malnourished children receiving treatment, which viewers may find distressing.
2-month-old Mohammed is lucky to be alive. Born 8 weeks premature in a village all but wiped out by drought. Dika, his 17-year-old mother, travelled 400 miles to get him to hospital and didn't think he'd make it.
She was very upset and worried about her condition. First time she came, she was worried like he will die.
Yeah,
she was very like worried, and she had pain about the child, and she doesn't sleep.
He still looks desperately ill, but doctors say he should survive. Many like him haven't. The ward is full. They're putting patients now on the floor. 1-year-old Mohammed is being given a nasal tube to feed him urgently needed fluids. Ward Dr. Abdul Rahman says he's afraid of what could be on the way.
The rains are not come early, the situation will come worse day by day, and the number of patients will be increasing, even hour by hour, day by day, and we cannot handle it or we cannot save them.
Right across the Horn of Africa, they are bracing themselves for the double impact of war and famine. The worst drought in 40 years is combining with the effects of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The war there may be thousands of miles away from these markets, but it's pushing up the prices of grain and fuel to unprecedented levels, making the impact of the drought even worse. The drought now threatens the worst famine for years. Camps are already filling, with people who've lost any means of supporting their families. The parents are desperate. Like Sophia, a few months ago, well off by her standards, she's now destitute. She's had to move to the camp after the drought killed all her livestock.
My grandfather was a goat herd. My father was a goat herd. I grew up in that life and ended up with 500 goats and 4 camels, and they've all been wiped out. I've got nothing now.
The rains have failed for a 4th year. With no grass left for the goats, they pull leaves from trees to eat. But getting food to the people who need it will be a huge challenge. Across the region, millions are facing acute hunger in the worst drought in over a generation, compounded by the war in Ukraine. And without massive international help, agencies say hundreds of thousands will die of starvation. Dominic Waghorn, Sky News, Mandera, Somaliland.
Well, let's get a bit more of today's climate news now. Firefighters in Spain are struggling to contain wildfires after an unusually early heat wave saw temperatures reach over 40 degrees. Now, the northwestern province of Zamora is among the worst hit areas. More than 61,000 acres of forests were destroyed in the area and hundreds of people evacuated. The biodiversity hotspot is home to one of the largest wolf populations in Western Europe. Now, China has also been experiencing a heat wave with power consumption surging in some areas. Now, the warmer temperatures mean homes and businesses are demanding more power as they switch on air conditioning to try to stay cool. Now, the province of Henan, home to 100 million people, set a new record yesterday using over 65 million kilowatts. That's according to state media. Longer, hotter summers caused by climate change could force China to ration power consumption during these periods. Colombia has elected Gustavo Petro as its first left-wing president. The former guerrilla fighter has vowed to end oil exploration. It's controversial in Colombia, as it's a major source of export earnings. Francia Marquez, a long-time environmental activist, will become the country's first black female vice president. Now, the lawyer was forced to flee her home after receiving death threats for opposing illegal gold mining in her area. Now, more than 60 people have died in flooding across India and Bangladesh, with millions of homes underwater. Now, both countries have called in the military to help rescue those stranded. The flooding in Bangladesh has been described by government officials as potentially the country's worst since 2004. Now, the extreme monsoon rains have hit large parts of northern Bangladesh and northeastern India, and it follows just weeks after pre-monsoon flash floods from India's northeastern states, and that had a huge impact, didn't it, on Bangladesh. Well, joining us now is Dr. Saiful Islam. He's director of the Institute of Water and Flood Management at Bangladesh University of Engineering and Technology. Thanks so much for joining me, Dr. Islam. So first of all, we know that Bangladesh is prone to flooding and monsoon rain, of course, but how do you think climate change has impacted the situation?
We have seen devastating flood recent times, and particularly this year, we have seen huge amount of rainfall occur in the upstream catchment, particularly northeast Bangladesh. And the flood in the past we have seen, Bangladesh is known for flood, but this time the amount of water come and it stays within a very short time. And many cities in the northeast part of the country has been underwater for several days. And we feel like the pattern of flooding is changing, successive floods, and every year we find floods. And now other part of the country, as you mentioned, the north and north central also affected. So these are the signals that weather pattern has changed. It becomes more frequent and intense. That has been mentioned in the last IPCC report, sixth assessment, and I was a contributor to the report as a lead author. So things are changing, and it's become more vulnerable. Country become more vulnerable.
And we know, Dr. Islam, that Bangladesh has had huge success in mitigating climate change. But how prepared do you think flood preparation is in the country?
Actually, as I mentioned, that we have a role model for managing different disaster, particularly flood and cyclone. But this time, government is also a big challenge because everywhere 90% of the city is underwater, which has not been in the case in the past. So even the airport is underwater, the power station, the hospitals, houses, everything is underwater. So even rescue relief or operation on particular districts is very difficult. And we are not that much prepared, actually. And we have to think how can manage in the future. What needs to be done as a priority as the recent time and also the long-term plans.
OK, Dr. Islam, thank you very much for talking to us today. And some good news now to end on, because bottlenose dolphins are now frequent visitors to the harbours of New York and New Jersey. A new study found the marine animals return for food and socialising, which could show an improvement in coastal water quality. Well, that's all from us today. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.